Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode until the question and answer portion of the conference. If you would like to ask a question at that time, please press star, then 1 on your touch-tone phone. The conference is being recorded. If you have any objection, you may disconnect. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host, Ms. Jetta Dinend. Thank you, ma'am. You may begin.
Thank you, Marcella. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Market Opportunities in China for U.S. Water Companies webinar presented by the U.S.-China Clean Tech Center. My name is Jetta Dinend, and I'm the International Trade Specialist responsible for the environmental sector for the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Commercial Service here in San Francisco. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us today and hope that you will leave this webinar equipped with new market awareness and an understanding of the many opportunities and resources available to U.S. water firms and organizations. While the water crisis is certainly not unique to China, the scale and severity of the shortage present innumerable opportunities for U.S. companies. China has the least fresh water per capita of any major country, and water scarcity and pollution currently cost China about 2.3% of GDP. Roughly 90% of groundwater is polluted, and about 60% is seriously polluted. Our speakers today will guide us through not only the opportunities, but the challenges, and will share their experiences from the government, nonprofit, and private sector perspective, providing you with thorough insight into the Chinese water industry. We will conclude with a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. We ask that you please hold your questions until the end. You will hear more about the U.S.-China Clean Tech Center on today's webinar, but before we get started, I would like to take just a couple of minutes to tell you what the International Trade Administration does and why it's of significance to U.S. businesses. The International Trade Administration is the lead trade promotion agency of the U.S. government. There are 4 arms of ITA, and while I won't make you memorize them, the important thing is to remember what they offer for U.S. companies doing businesses abroad. Through our 100 U.S. offices, 130 overseas offices in the U.S. embassies and consulates, and our folks in Washington, ITA provides industry expertise and analysis, industry-specific market research reports, matchmaking programs, advocacy, and it also promotes market access and helps to overcome trade barriers. The U.S. Commercial Service, one arm of ITA, is the arm that I work for here in San Francisco. Our specific role is to promote the exports of goods and services and technologies from the U.S., represent U.S. business interests internationally, and especially help U.S. businesses find qualified partners overseas. The Market Development Cooperator Program, or MDCP, I hope you all have your pen and paper ready for all the acronyms you'll hear today, is administered by the International Trade Administration. MDCP establishes a partnership between ITA and nonprofit industry groups to support innovative projects that enhance industry's competitive position in a given market or region. The U.S.-China Clean Tech Center is exactly this, a public-private partnership between ITA and the Innovation Center for Energy and Transportation. And the reason this is important to those of you on the call today is that under the umbrella of this agreement and with the goal of increasing clean tech exports to China, the U.S.-China Clean Tech Center offers many resources to help U.S. companies and organizations enter or expand in the Chinese market. So this includes conferences, seminars, trade missions, the webinar today, and extensive support for U.S. clean technology. You will hear much more about this in future presentations, but I would like to go ahead and introduce our first speaker, Ms. Margaret Wong. Ms. Wong is President and CEO of McWong International, founded in 1984. She has used her extensive network in China and experience in doing business with China to create one of the West Coast's most successful China trade companies. In 1997, Margaret Wong founded McWong Environmental and Energy Group, which specializes in the export of environmental and energy-related technology and equipment for wastewater treatment projects in China. With that, I will hand it over to Ms. Wong.
Good morning. I'm going to get the slides from the top. Good morning. My name is Margaret Wong, and I am with McWong Environmental Energy Group. We are a company that actually doing business with China for the last 15 years in the water basin since 1997. And we are the people that people call that we're the street people out there that are actually doing water project with China. And we are primarily focusing on wastewater treatment, water recycling, the sludge dewatering, and the oil recycling project in China. Our project involved with sale of equipment, licensing technology, and also for the EPC project, the engineering design project, and also the BOO project, which is the build, operating, and own project. So we're very active in China in water. We have over a few hundred people in China, and mostly dealing with the industrial wastewater projects. And we targeting mainly the tier 1 industries who appreciate technology and also be able to pay for what they wanted to import from the United States. And we export a number of technologies from the United States, and we also export many, many different types of equipment from from the United States to China. So we do a lot of system integration so that we can put together the whole turnkey system, including the equipment, the design and the engineering, and the construction in a lot of projects. And I can go into more of the different type of project later on, but this morning I'd like to be able to talk a little bit about China and how I envision this is really the next gold rush of U.S.-China business in the environmental, particularly in the water project. I'd like to spend a few minutes on the China economic outlook and also on the opportunities for the American businesses, and also what kind of a cultural bridge, what kind of cross-cultural bridge to strike what we call the gold rush money. Now, the China economic outlook, number one, we're talking about the uptrend. As you all know, that China is the world's second largest economy after the U.S., and the GDP value at about 5.87 in the year 2010. It is the fastest growing economy and estimated world's largest by the year 2020 at 24 trillion. And China is the largest exporter and second largest importer of goods in the world, and the growth rate average has been 10% per year over the last 30 years. And China is the largest creditor in the world. They own approximately 20.8% of all foreign-owned U.S. Treasury securities. And then, China is, besides people say that it's made in China, actually China is transitioning from made in China to innovated in China. And estimated by 2013, 2/3 of the world middle class will be living in China. And 5 of the top 20 most visited websites in the world are indexed in Chinese, such as Baidu.com, Taobao, Sina.com, Tudou, and also gain use in both North America and Europe. Now, don't underestimate the social networking, because this is huge for them to be able to sort out technology and import and export. The downtrend is from 2011. China has been experiencing economic downtrend, throws above into doubts. And GDP has been falling 4 to 5%, and basically they have failed to switch successfully from export-driven market into, import, which is more of domestic consumption, which is a great opportunity for U.S. companies because they need a lot more product than they anticipated. And then the reason why the growth in China is being interrupted because they have inflation problem, labor shortage, and rising export costs, and they have a lot of systematic problems, and in regulatory environment, and also regional economics, some of the complications, and the currency issues. And then the long-term growth of China really depends on the Chinese government, how they move from aggressive, as a clinical tightening into a more normalized overall economic policy. And also rebalancing the economy away from investment in the export into domestic consumption. And then also the focus to improve the support of the private enterprising, and then really have to phase out the dominance of the state-owned enterprising. And this is a tough task, but it's happening as we speak. The new dynamics of China is the global recession risk rises and the whole wide GDP growth projection lowered. They were saying that if China sneezes, the whole world is going to be affected. Obviously, the China-Japan disagreement is a big impact on the China and Japanese trade because of Diaoyu Island, and on the other hand, it really gives U.S. a lot of opportunities too. And also a lot of issues about the national security over China direct investment into the United States. So just today, we are seeing the Wall Street Journal about Huawei, the security issues. This all going to be affecting what we are doing with the U.S. and China trade. For us being so active in China, I see tremendous opportunities. It is rising so fast. There's a lot of low-hanging fruits. So I think there is tremendous opportunity for California business in China, especially in the environmental field. And the China currency, the renminbi, is the all-time low. So made in the United States are mostly competitively worldwide. And this is the time for us to go export into China because the Chinese currency are very, very high right now. And the Chinese government policy to really stimulate local consumption, and they really put on a lot of efforts to promote import from the United States, from all over the world to balance the trade. And the China production and labor costs are rising, so the cost gap between U.S. and China is reducing, meaning that our products have become more competitive. And there's a lot of aggressive U.S. export policy from the United States, from Obama administration, and I think that we should take advantage of that. The emerging U.S. export categories, of course, that everybody know about, the brand consumer luxury goods is good. But I have to say the new green and renewable energy, the energy efficient electronic components, environmental related technology goods is really top of the list. And I can tell you that we're so busy that we couldn't even keep up with the projects that kept, coming on board. A lot of the technology the Chinese wanted are really the top technology. And recently we're working on a lot of projects, what we call a zero liquid discharge on water. Something like this is really very, very difficult to launch in the United States, not to talk about China, but China wants that. So, and then of course the information technology is needed in China, education, food and ag, those are the areas are very highly sought after. And, I have a rule that when we do business in China that you really have to have a lot of patience. And a lot of people ask me, well, how do you, breach over the gap in doing the business in China? And I have the rule of the ABCDE. A is really you have to accept and realize that the importance of the economic impact of China trade and investment. The world is getting smaller, and I think that, we just cannot, forget about the impact of China with the international trade. So we have to accept the fact the world is getting smaller and we need to be more international. Belief is, the B is, we have to be open-minded. Obviously, in China there's a lot of piracy, the IP issue, the human rights issue. There's a lot of issues. But we have to be open-minded and understand the China business structure, and then, I call it minimize your concern about this and be able to go forward and sort after yourself and eliminate the problem or to overcome the problem, because sometimes that we'll be so overwhelmed with the human rights issue or the IP issue, we just put a brick on it and not doing anything, and I think that's not correct. Connection is the C. Everybody knows in doing business in China is who you know to do business. It's not as much as what you do and what you have. You have to have a very good network and understanding the importance of the connections. And the differences, again, we have to accept the fundamental differences between China and the United States. We have to accept that. A lot of time we said we have to sell what China wants. a lot of the American companies are wrong is because they sell what they have. What we have not necessarily going to be accepted by China. So understanding the differences in the culture was really going to help you. Engagement is also important. You know, engaging with the right partner in China is going to help you jump step a lot. And I think that is the hard part, but it is something that is necessary. So again, you know, we can create jobs by wealth. You know, create jobs is important, but create wealth is equally important. So I'm always believe in, you know, you increase export to China can create jobs and also create wealth. And then attract Chinese consumer spending in tourism and education. And also, you know, insourcing. We're doing a lot of insourcing right now, moving a lot of manufacturing from China back to the United States is something that we've been doing it quite effectively. And then we encourage a lot of the China foreign investment. You know, and thank you so much. And I just want to be able to tell you that doing projects in China is not easy. We've been starting a very, you know, rough stage at the beginning. And once we sink into the project, once we be able to develop the relationship and know what we're doing, we really do a combination of U.S. product, U.S. technology, but Chinese, you know, a lot using Chinese manufacturing and Chinese design. So we do a combination of both so that we will have a very strong presence in China so that they know the technology from the United States, you know, the equipment from the United States, and yet we're very strong in China to support, you know, the team support in after-sales services and be able to provide them many different type of options so that they can feel that we are a Chinese company and yet we are a U.S. company that could be able to help them. So water project is very, very strong. As you know that, you know, the wastewater treatment is, I would say, environmental is the top of the list for China right now. Water is also at the top of the list for environmental project. So we're very active, as I indicated it. We sell technology, we sell equipment. We also do build, operating, and own, which is something that we're very active. What that means is we build the wastewater treatment facility, we operate it, and we own them, and we also charge the water fee. And then after a number of years, after we get our payback, we turn it over to the Chinese. So this has been very, very effective and very profitable for our investment. And this is something that to give more of a certainty or guarantee to my Chinese client that we will deliver quality system, and we will also operate the system so that they feel comfortable. So after a while, they take it over. So I found this type of working relationship a very viable one. So feel free to ask me any question after, you know, that all speakers completed with their presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Margaret. That was a very interesting presentation. It's always nice to hear an overview of the strength of the Chinese market and have a reminder of how important the market is. And your tips for being successful are very helpful, and I look forward to hearing more about some of your experiences during the Q&A session.
Thank you.
All right. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Lyda Fitz. Lyda Fitz serves as country manager for East Asia for the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, where she manages the agency's largest portfolio, covering China and Mongolia. Ms. Fitz has over 11 years' experience creating and managing international trade development programs. She's traveled and worked in over 60 countries. Ms. Fitz?
Thanks so much. So as you said, this is Lyda Fitz from U.S. Trade and Development Agency, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit both about TDA, but certainly about what we have found in China's water sector in terms of interest for U.S. companies. First, a little bit about TDA, so you know who's talking. TDA is a small independent agency of the U.S. federal government. We report directly to the president, and we have a dual mission. One is to help, part of that is to help U.S. companies export, and the other part is to help lower and middle income countries in their economic development. So we're looking for projects that we can support that have mutual benefit. And we work all around the world, but China is our largest portfolio, single country-wise. we have the way we measure our success and the way we establish what projects we support is looking at a multiplier, i.e. for each U.S. tax dollar we would invest in a project, be it through a grant or other funding, what potential U.S. exports might result. And we track that very carefully, and currently our multiplier stands at 63 to 1. So for every dollar we invest, we see $63 in U.S. exports. And that's an average over a 10-year period. China performs markedly better than that for us, and so it's one reason that we've put a lot of investment in it. It's our biggest portfolio, as I said, and we focus there on 4 sectors: transportation, clean energy, a little in health, and in the environment. And environment is where I'll focus on today. Our funding comes in 2 types. You'll see this as the tagline, matching U.S. commercial interests with development opportunities. I often say that we're sort of like as if the U.S. Department of Commerce and the U.S. Agency for International Development had a child, we would be their child agency. There's a combine of some of these missions. But HYPER funding goes into 2 types. One is this International Business Partnership Program, which you see on your left, which is all about making introductions from decision makers and buyers in the countries where we work with U.S. firms, usually in the States. So the reverse trade missions, and that's when we bring a set of 12 to 15 to 20 buyers, in this case from China, to the U.S. to see U.S. technologies, to understand how we do things here, what our best practices are, and where those might meet China's interests. We've done a lot of these in environment and a number, I think 3 in the last 18 months from the Ministry of Environmental Protection. So it's been a focus in the sector. We do conferences. We helped fund the last Environmental Industries Forum within New Orleans, and certainly do a number of other types of conferences in other sectors. And we fund workshops. I'll talk a little bit more about some examples in water later. The other part of our program, and probably more of our funding, is in project development, and those tend to be for project preparation, be they pilot projects, feasibility studies, technical assistance, where we help a U.S. firm demonstrate their technology in the Chinese context and show that it is both technically and economically feasible to be adopted in Chinese city or province or really wherever the opportunity is. For our work in water, we've done about 35 environmental pilot projects or technical assistance activities since 2001. I put a sample of them on this slide. The first, as I said, I was going to talk about workshops. The first is a program that we put in place with the Environmental Protection Agency here and the Ministry of Environmental Protection in China to do 12 workshops in China on water quality issues. That was in cooperation also with 4 U.S. industry associations. So we really look to U.S. industry to say, here's where I see an opportunity, here's where I want to get my technical information across to Chinese buyers. And so we held these around China, wherever the market was strongest for U.S. firms. And I'll talk a little bit more later about what we found in that program. The next 4 of these are all grants. The most recent one is the third, the Groundwater Investigation Technical Assistance and Pilot Project, which we just signed in December. That is on a partnership basis with a number of 3 U.S. firms, Brizia, Geotech, and Hawk, to pilot U.S. equipment for groundwater assessment and to some extent monitoring within Ministry of Environmental Protection. So that's just getting started. And the last one, the Han River Non-Point Source Monitoring System, is also a feasibility study, but we did that not with an EPB or MEP, but with Zhejiang Water Resources Commission. And that has already completed. It was to enact a comprehensive water management system for the Han River. And we've already seen, even though it's recently finished, some significant purchases of U.S. equipment and services, several $1 million, come out of implementing the recommendations from that study. The trade mission that I think it's one of the reasons I was invited to talk today that we last sponsored in this sector was this past July. We brought a number of Chinese officials, some from the Ministry of Environmental Protection, some from provincial bureaus, and some companies, actually, who are responsible for protection and remediation of China's groundwater resources. They were in the U.S. over 8 days. They met with 37 U.S. companies in groundwater protection and remediation sector, most of which are interested in the Chinese market. And these companies were service providers as well as equipment suppliers. And you see the cities there in the last bullet that they visited. They went to 2 Superfund sites, Onondaga Lake and then the Charnock MTBE in the field, and then they participated in presentations for several others to really get a sense of how things are done in the U.S. and what sort of technologies are used to do so. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the delegates as well as from the U.S. companies, and we learned a few lessons from those conversations that I thought would be interesting for U.S. companies interested in the market. So what these delegates told us, and to some extent what companies told us in their feedback, it mirrored a little bit of what Margaret already covered. It's absolutely imperative to have a local partner in the Chinese market who's dependable, who knows the Chinese regulations, the government organization, and knows how what you're interested in could fit into activities being planned or conducted at the provincial level, because that's really where most projects are actually implemented. That's where your buyer is going to be. There is a hesitance, and we've seen this across the board, about sharing specific projects that could expose shortcomings or be embarrassment in terms of levels of pollution or how things are handled. So it can, and for that matter, it's also, there's a sensitivity around data on groundwater and other things that are in terms of natural resources in China. That is somewhat, it's not data that would normally be sensitive in the U.S. So it's worthwhile for U.S. companies to know that in terms of proposing things and assessing sites, there may be a sensitivity, or working with data, there may be sensitivity, or in fact not have access to data that China feels is secure, or is a security risk. Third, provinces are graded by how well they do in respect to their 5-year, in this case, 10-year plans. And that puts a lot of pressure on provincial leaders to produce something immediately. So there's a longer-term time frame that U.S. buyers are more comfortable with. It's not the same in China. We're looking for, if you can deliver faster, if you can make an impact more quickly, that's really more of a competitive edge. The Chinese approach to site remediation includes very strong weighting on social and political criteria. And so those are 2 issues that really have to be thought through in any proposals or plans. And in fact, the delegates were really looking at a way that could input this to give them a tool that would consider those in looking at different solutions. After this trade mission, USTDA sent a definitional mission to China. It was performed by Ascendant Program Services. And in TDA speak, a definitional mission is when we send technical experts over to look at what are really the market opportunities for U.S. firms in this specific sector. And the next few slides summarize what Ascendant found. This whole report, by the way, is publicly accessible from the USTDA library, and I certainly recommend it for companies who would be new to the market or new to these players. One of the report said that the country's first national plan on groundwater was completed in 2011. It's looking at a combination of legal, economic, technical, administrative measures, and there are 3 decision makers: the Ministry of Environmental Protection, who I've mentioned a number of times, but also Ministry of Land and Resources and Ministry of Water Resources. The investment that these 3 and others will be making under this plan is $5.5 billion between now. Some investment has already been made, started in 2011, but by 2020. And because there has been a sort of a slow ramp up. We think the majority of this money is yet to be spent. So it's a real opportunity for U.S. firms who can take it. The plan that's put out is in 2 stages. We're looking at short-term goals, which were really by 2015, is coming up rapidly, to form a general understanding of what the current situation is and to bring the worst of it under control. And then by 2020 to have full monitoring of the typical sources of groundwater pollution and to ensure safety, complete protection of the essential underground drinking water sources. The plan breaks out the category of projects into 6 areas: survey, prevention, remediation, control of pollution, agriculture-related groundwater pollution control, and then underground water environmental monitoring capacity building. We've seen particular opportunity for U.S. companies in the monitoring portion. The target sites that the national plan puts out include 5 types: gas stations, the mining sites, industrial plants, landfills, and hazardous waste sites. And it also is called for several large-scale demonstration or pilot projects to be carried out in different areas in China and provincial level. So the project I mentioned earlier, Technical Assistance Pilot Program for Groundwater Assessment, focuses on 2 of these, a gas station and a landfill area. And it provides an opportunity to look at how U.S. equipment could be used to assess those sites and to provide some monitoring. The Water Quality Cooperation Program that did 12 workshops across China over several years, it's recently completed back in this past year in 2012, had hundreds of Chinese buyers and decision makers as part of these workshops. And Scranton Gillette Communications, who ran as a logistics contractor for these, felt that after all of these discussions, they had come away with a few lessons that they wanted to transmit back to U.S. companies. And so I've summarized a few of these on these next few slides. And again, I am repeating some of what Margaret said, and that is that there's a lot of opportunity in China. It is a big market. It takes some time to understand. You can't usually expect quick success. It takes some time to figure out the lay of the land and the players. And then those relationships, understanding who is dependable and then making relationships with those local players is very important, much more so than it is in the U.S. And that those relationships are part of a support network that's very key to having success in China. You also will need, U.S. firms will need a local presence through staff or partners to be taken seriously. It shows a level of commitment to the Chinese market that buyers want to see. Chinese market is maturing quickly. In areas where there's a difference in European and U.S. market etiquette, the tendency is to go with the European. And when there are tensions between our governments, it also can have an impact on buying decisions. And we've certainly seen this over the years across every sector. In fact, we once in a meeting had our Chinese counterpart to show us a graph of, when he had bought U.S. equipment and the timeline against when there had been tensions between the 2 firms. So it's useful to know in terms of the environment you're going into. And finding the bids and the jobs can be difficult because you have to know where to look. And again, that's where having a dependable local partner is key. However, there's more money, as we already said, $5.5 billion to be invested, and that is increasingly looking at drinking water source protection. Budgets for plants are growing, and there's a real interest in U.S.-made goods. There's a brand of U.S. that brand of U.S.-made products has a cachet generally in China. So that's positive for U.S. firms. the purchasing decisions are more centralized than they are in the U.S., so there are not as many influencers, but that can make it harder to figure out who the actual decision maker is. The design institutes who are connected to the environmental protection bureaus are important players and are fairly key to the process, more so than engineering firms in the U.S. But, of course, as it's here, the owners make the final decisions. Slides seem to be stuck here. Natalie, I don't know if you can take over for me, but my slide button is no longer advancing. All right, well, I have my slides in front of me, so I can talk for them until we can get that one, get this issue fixed.
I think we can see it. I think the slides are changing on our end.
Are they? Well, it's just, I'm afraid it's just kicked me out. But
excuse me, this is the operator. I can advance slides if you need me to.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, and I'm currently showing you on number 16.
Okay,
Thomas
I'm
Deckers Real
trying
Company.
to speak from number 15, actually.
Okay.
So the opportunities that in terms of where the market is looking for technologies that we see are, one, there's an uneven distribution and quality of water resources between the northern and southern regions of China. We've already had, in the last few years, a project that surrounded the south-north water diversion in terms of monitoring pollution. There's a lot of investment in terms of getting water resources from south to north, and that is an area where technology is really needed. There are significant concerns regarding the quality of groundwater throughout the country, but particularly in shallow portions, in the aquifers and coastal areas. But groundwater is a very important part of China's water infrastructure. 61% of cities use groundwater as a drinking water source, and the 65% of domestic water, 50% of industrial water, 33% of ag water is sourced from groundwater supplies. Next slide. Ascendant looked at areas where they thought would be most promising for U.S. companies in terms of where the China market was, in terms of development of domestic technologies, and where price competitiveness was more attractive for U.S. firms. And you'll see broken out here on this slide number of areas under equipment, and then consulting, and then modeling and simulation. So broadly are all areas where there looks to be a real competitive for U.S. firms. I will say in the last one that data sensitivity can be an issue in modeling and simulation. The next slide. And then there's certain areas where China is actively looking for new technologies. Energy consumption, that's a goal across the board, and provincial leaders are trying to meet that apart from water, their energy consumption reduction goals. And so any technology that you can bring to the table that is energy efficient will be more attractive. Increased durability. This is a little newer, and so we're glad to see that the durability is being counted. That's an area where U.S. products tend to excel. And earlier in China, price sensitivity was such that durability was less valued. And so this change, I think, is welcome for U.S. firms. Looking for technology that can be operated by low-tech personnel. Decentralized wastewater systems have strong possibilities. Groundwater, source water, monitoring and protection systems is a big market for, and technologies that deal with salinity and brackishness of water are key, including membranes and desalination equipment. And then water reuse is gaining as the usage requirements are growing for the percent of reuse water in the systems. Next slide. I have put together, and for U.S. firms who are interested in the market, a few resources that we point people to in reverse trade missions. Maureen, who's speaking after me, is on this slide, so I hope that's okay. And her counterpart in Beijing, Andrew Ballard, is a fantastic resource for firms who are getting the lay of the land. I've put my contact, Lida Fitz, at the top, along with Sally Wan, who is my counterpart in Beijing. And we'd be happy to hear from anybody who is interested in the market or interested in TDA assistance. And then the contact at EPA for water, who really does a lot of work in China, Sasha Kuwashima, is also a good contact for U.S. firms. Next slide. I haven't talked up here about upcoming events because I know Maureen is going to cover the EIF, but we do have a number of workshops and reverse trade missions that come up in the sector fairly often, and so I wanted to show you where you could find those if you're interested in this news and events button on our website, which also has information on the projects that we have funded, or for that matter, in model proposals or the TDA process. If you, as a U.S. firm, get to the point where you have a pilot project that you'd like to have TDA funding from, this is a great source, as is just calling me or Sally in Beijing. Well, that is the end of my presentation, and look forward to any questions at the end. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lida. That was an excellent presentation. It's really helpful to see some of the new technologies that China is seeking. I think that's useful information for us, and also nice to have the reminder that China really is a country where you need to have a long-term strategy. We've now heard that from both of our speakers and certainly before, but it's nice to be reminded of that because it is something that your company should be committed to, and understanding the importance of getting a local partner on the ground as a minimum, as your first step is also good to hear. So we look forward to engaging you in the question and answer period, but for now let's move on to our next speaker, which is Maureen Hinman. Maureen Hinman is an environmental technology trade specialist in the International Trade Administration's Office of Energy and Environmental Industries at the U.S. Department of Commerce. In this capacity, Ms. Hinman provides industry expertise on various facets of environmental industry within government and advocates for trade policies and promotion strategies on behalf of the industry. Maureen?
Thanks so much, Detta. It's a great introduction. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I know for our friends on the West Coast, it was quite early, and for our friends on the East Coast, we're almost running into lunchtime, so I will try to be informative and succinct. Today, I'm going to provide you with an overview of the policy and cooperation frameworks that the U.S. government has for engaging China in the environmental and commercial space. My goal today is to help you understand the critical role U.S. companies play in the process and to introduce you to the Environmental Industries Forum, which is a unique opportunity that is included in the forthcoming groundwater mission. Before I get started, I'd like to thank the U.S.-China Clean Tech Center for partnering with the U.S. Department of Commerce and sponsoring this mission, as well as the Environmental Industries Forum. I can just say that we are expecting this mission to be wildly successful on many levels. So to get started, this is a quick overview of the U.S.-China environmental engagement, the cooperation frameworks where that occurs. This graphic I've provided here is actually a very oversimplified version of a complex series of dialogues, working groups, and technical cooperation programs. But just to make it simple for you in general, there are three main conduits for engagement. The U.S.-China Joint Commission on Commerce and Trade, also colloquially known as the JCCT. The second is the U.S.-China Strategic and Economic Dialogue, known as the SNED. And the third is the U.S. EPA Bilateral Cooperation on Environmental Protection, and that's often referred to as the JCEC, and I apologize that the slide does not reflect that. So JCCT is led by the U.S. Trade Representative and the U.S. Department of Commerce. SNED is led by the Department of State and the Department of Treasury. And EPA's programs are actually just direct set of cooperation work between the Environmental Protection Agency and the Chinese Ministry of Environmental Protection. The JCCT is a senior policy dialogue. It was established in 1983, so just a year before Ms. Wong began her business. I don't know if that was, planned or fortuitous, but it sounds about the time when we started to get a little bit more engaged. The JCCT is the main forum for addressing bilateral trade and investment issues and promoting commercial opportunities between the United States and China. There's an annual series of meetings at the presidential and cabinet level where priorities are set and high-level commitments are made between the two governments. However, most of the work throughout the year is done through a series of topical working groups. For environment, this is done through the aptly named Environment Working Group, or EWG. And I am, just FYI, the staff lead for the Environment Working Group, so I tend to engage pretty regularly with my Chinese counterparts and also with my counterparts at the US EPA. Some of the technical areas the Environment Working Group has dealt with include water treatment broadly, SOx and NOx pollution reduction, mercury pollution reduction, electronic scrap recycling, as well as general commercial issues as they pertain to China's environmental sector. The EWG also hosts a biennial policy dialogue called the Environmental Industries Forum, or EIF for short. And as Jetta noted, we use lots of acronyms in Washington, so please, at the end, if you need any clarifications, let us know. In the coming slides, I'll be discussing EIF in a little bit more detail, so I'm just going to continue with the general description of the other policy dialogues. Similar to JCCT, the SNED is a senior policy dialogue meeting annually. SNED was established by President Obama in April of 2009 and will meet for the fourth time, I believe, this summer in 2013. Its predecessor is the SNED, and that was actually initiated in 2004 under President Bush. So there's a little bit of, realistically, it's been around for about 9 years. The critical difference between JCCT and SNED is that the SNED focuses on diplomatic and strategic issues. Obviously, environment is a transborder issue, as well as an issue that affects national stability. So within the SNED, it's addressed in the strategic track as opposed to the other track, which is the economic track. It's a two-track system. Under the SNED, the 10-year framework on energy and environment cooperation, or TYF, was launched in 2008. And the TYF is critical and important because it's a platform for technical cooperation that hosts bilateral action plans on water, air, transportation, energy efficiency, and electricity. As far as we're concerned, environment, we actually spend the most time engaging with TYF on water and air because this office focused entirely on traditional environment. The final contract for cooperation is held directly between the US EPA and the Ministry of Environmental Protection, often referred to as MEP or MEP. Their 2003 Memorandum of Understanding, they agreed to bilaterally to undertake cooperative activities on environmental management and pollution control. The MOU is operationalized through the establishment of the Joint Committee on Environmental Cooperation, or JCEC. And similar to the 10-year framework, the JCEC hosts 3 topical annexes. They include air pollution, water pollution, and pollution from persistent organic pollutants and other toxic substances. Okay, jumping ahead. Oh, sorry, can we go right back? Can we go back one slide, please? Thanks. Okay, so this is just a kind of a basic representation of all these dialogues, how they interact together, and how the variety of U.S. agencies work together when we engage with China. And it's an example of its complexity. From a practical perspective, these frameworks develop and share projects across the interagency, as illustrated here. Lead agencies are responsible for direct discussions and agenda setting with Chinese counterparts. Program supporting agencies develop and conduct technical programs to support policy and cooperation goals. And participating agencies provide input to the process where relevant. So, for instance, the JCCT and SNED, which are main bilateral dialogues, are pretty much run at the cabinet level, with other agencies providing input on specific topics and areas to be broached. The EWG, EIF, 10-year framework, and MEP's MOUs really engage with sponsoring agencies on programs. And so, for instance, the reversed groundwater reverse trade mission that Lida was speaking about before, which USTDA sponsored, was an area where we include both in 10-year framework, but also in JCCT EWG. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so now we get into the fun stuff. I'm going to provide a little bit of background on the Environmental Industries Forum. The EIF, as I mentioned before, is a biennial activity of the JCCT Environment Working Group. It's focused on promoting trade and bilateral cooperation in the environmental sector, and its goal is to enhance China's ability to meet environmental goals, as both Margaret and Lida noted are profound and vast. It was developed in 2008 under a bilateral memorandum of cooperation between the U.S. Department of Commerce, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the China Ministry of Environmental Protection, or MAP. So building on successes in 2008 and 2010, the 2013 EIF is focused on capitalizing on prior cooperation on groundwater, as Lida mentioned, and goal setting for the remainder of this 5-year plan period. Okay, sorry, just a step back for a minute. The 2000F, just by way of history, the 2008 EIF focused on best practices in the environmental sector and increasing the deployment of environmental technologies broadly. In 2010, it was actually held at WEFTEC in New Orleans, and it focused on water and wastewater treatment, as well as, and it was actually held in conjunction with the USTDA's only U.S.-based U.S.-China Water Quality Training Workshop Series. So this year, upon request from the Ministry of Environmental Protection, we're focusing the EIF on groundwater source protection, monitoring, and remediation. We agree with MEP this is a fantastic area to cooperate on, since China's groundwater situation is dire and there are vast investments planned. The Ministry of Land Resources reports that 57% of groundwater ranks bad or very bad in quality estimates. The National Groundwater Contamination Prevention and Remediation Plan calls for an investment of around $34.7 billion to 2020, which Lida also noted. Groundwater protection efforts are focused on monitoring, source control, and remediation, and the 12th five-year plan delineates the study of pollution assessment, monitoring, and simulation in order to establish a national monitoring system with quality standards. Source control research focuses on hazardous waste storage, landfill contamination, oil and gas extraction, mining, agriculture, and underground piping and disposal systems to establish control techniques and rules. China seeks to address issues with contaminated groundwater by conducting a groundwater pollution remediation pilot study that will inform national approaches to groundwater remediation and lead to subsequent large-scale remediation projects. The U.S. Superfund experience in groundwater remediation creates a competitive advantage for U.S. companies. And so we really believe that now is a critical time to engage. So including groundwater as a main topical technical area in the Environmental Industries Forum is timely both for from a policy perspective, but also for U.S. companies. Next slide, please. So the Environmental Industries Forum, it's structured in a very interesting way. So if you recall from my first slide, there's all these different areas where we engage China, all these different platforms. But EIF is unique in that it's one of the few platforms where industry is a formal partner. So essentially, it brings together Chinese government and U.S. government to discuss policy, but also the U.S. environmental industry and the Chinese environmental industry to discuss industry issues broadly. Recognizing that the inclusion of industry, environmental, and trade discussions contributes to developing effective policies, we feel that this engagement creates a better conduit for industry advice and also creates a richer environment for discussions since it's not solely government-to-government discussions. It also creates a fantastic commercial opportunity for companies because in addition to playing a role where you're advising on technical areas and discussing the practicalities of implementing programs, it's a great opportunity to meet counterparts in the Chinese private sector as well as policymakers. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the agenda, which is going to be a two-track series on July 24th, which is the second day of the trade mission. All companies participating in the groundwater trade mission will automatically have access to the EIF and will be able to serve as delegates, as I mentioned before. The technical track is, again, focuses on groundwater source protection, monitoring, and remediation. And I think the agenda, as it broadly conceived, will include the Ministry of Environmental Protection as well as kind of local EPBs delineating their priorities in terms of groundwater and the projects they have planned. EPA provide a regulatory and technical overview of the U.S. approach. It's actually quite exciting. This year we have Assistant Administrator Nancy Stoner, who's the head of the Office of Water for EPA. She'll be leading EPA's technical discussions there, so I think it's also, again, a fantastic opportunity to engage at a high level. And finally, companies will provide an overview of their technologies and will provide practical insights on the deployment of those technologies and how they might be helpful in China's case. The second track is a bilateral policy track, and it's focused on creating additional priorities for collaboration in the remainder of this 12th five-year plan. Again, MEP will provide an overview of their environmental objectives broadly. The Department of Commerce will provide a summary of the various activity streams we've worked on previously, and will make some suggestions for areas we believe we can cooperate in moving forward. And finally, companies will have an opportunity to reflect on the challenges facing their sector and also their specific firms in China, as well as the opportunities. Okay, next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, the EIF will take place on July 24th. It's actually occurring during the China International Environmental Protection Exhibition and Conference, or CEPEC for short. CEPEC is interesting because it's the Ministry of Environmental Protection's show, and it's coordinated by an arm of MEP, an MEP-advised industry association called the China Association of Environmental Protection and Industry, or KB. If you join us on the mission, you'll get to know both of these parties quite well. Because it's MEP show, it actually is a unique platform because it draws together policymakers and procurement officials from the Ministry of Environmental Protection, as well as those from the regional municipal environmental protection bureaus. And as Lyda mentioned, most of the deployment of programs actually occurs on the provincial or municipal level, and so this is a great way to access individuals who are actually planning nuts and bolts projects as opposed to just kind of high-level policy talks. Okay, and then final slide, please. So I've attached my contact information. I hope this has been informative. We really hope that you'll join us for both EIF as well as the mission. I think it'll be a fantastic opportunity. And if you have any questions, we'll remain on the line after the end of everyone's presentations. But if you want to contact me privately, please use the contact information I provided here. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Maureen, very much for your presentation. It's always nice to have an understanding of the government programs that are working to support policy, that's beneficial both to the environment and to U.S. business interests. And I know there are a lot of government agencies involved, so it's really helpful to have that overview. And certainly the Environmental Industries Forum is an excellent opportunity. So I will now move on to our last but not least speaker, Mr. Yumin Ye. Mr. Ye serves as manager for the U.S.-China Clean Tech Center, as well as on other U.S.-China collaboration projects for the Innovation Center for Energy and Transportation. He manages the implementation of sustainable development policies and technologies from the U.S. to China. Before working as a U.S.-China expert with experience at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, he worked in California as an engineer and consultant to the private sector in environmental, health, and safety. And to that, Mr. Ye?
Hello, everybody. Thanks again for joining. Can everybody hear me okay, I hope? So I want to talk to you about how this matters for you as the audience, who are mostly from the industry and are looking, because you're joining this webinar, on how to tap into the China clean water market. And so you have seen from the beginning we have had experts from people who have done it successfully in industry, such as Mick Wong, and their experience and their encouragements, and then also people from government who are also doing the same in terms of encouraging businesses such as you to tap into the market. And so I'm here to tell you how the U.S. Department of Commerce is setting up a program and a special opportunity for you as a company in the water technology market in the U.S. looking to expand to China. So this is where you can see everything kind of comes together, and if there is this demand there, how can you get involved? So I'm going to give you several different opportunities on how you can actually start to participate, not just at the policy level, not just from a broad level understanding, but on the ground, into the weeds, and actually starting to get business in China. So we've already heard from different people about the business opportunities, and then we heard, I mean, you can see just different multiple agencies and experts from the government, and you see it just frankly, it's in the news. China's energy and environmental problems are simply the most massive in the world. And you know, we've already talked about this, but I'm just going to give you, again, just numbers just to signify that really how important this is. China's clean technology market has increased 186 billion in 2010 and will grow to 555 billion annually in 2020. And the 12th five-year plan stresses, it really puts at the top of its priority list energy and environment because of public protest and because of the things that realize that it is affecting the economy. So China lacks key clean technologies, and thus clean technology, especially water, has tremendous untapped export potential in China. Unfortunately, U.S. companies have this world-class technology but are not taking advantage of the opportunities available. In fact, we've seen how China has repeatedly just been shown to have this unprecedented economic growth and demand for foreign clean technology, but the countries that are actually more successful in clean tech, including water, have often been Japanese and European companies for various reasons, because often their government has different programs. They have a stronger foothold in China's growing clean technology market. And so the U.S. has not always been taking advantage of the opportunities available. But as we've seen from such experts from USTDA sponsoring reverse trade missions, definitional missions, and then a lot of these cooperation frameworks, it is prime for U.S. companies to start to get involved. In fact, U.S. and China are destined to collaborate on clean technology, and it's going to happen no matter what, because it is the biggest problem that's affecting both of us, environmental problems. So we're going to have the most business that are involved in this sector, and we're going to have the most cooperation in this sector as well. So the U.S. Department of Commerce has sponsored the U.S.-China Clean Tech Center, and its front and center right here, it's a public-private partnership between a nonprofit and the International Trade Mission Administration to expand U.S. exports in clean technology and environmental technology to China. We are a nonprofit, and we want to specifically use our historical basic background as a think tank with connections in the policy area to China. So we've heard it repeatedly, to do business in China, you need connection. And ICET, which is the Innovation Center for Energy and Transportation, who is sponsoring the UCCTC, has been a think tank for many years in China, and we advise the government on many levels on energy and environmental standards. And so we already have connections. And so the U.S. Department of Commerce wanted to partner with a local, somebody with some local presence, knows how to access the local Chinese market and can help U.S. businesses. So if you look at these different types of stakeholders in the China market, these are all stakeholders that you all want to be able to be connected to. UCCT's mission is to provide U.S. clean tech firms simply a cost-effective and strategic launching pad where they can showcase their great products and services especially water technology, as well as attract investment into China's leading markets for clean technology. So we are the only U.S. Commerce-sponsored clean tech connector and marketplace that is on the ground in China. We talked about the special partnership, and we have an office in Beijing, and you're welcome to visit us if you have any time if you want to come by Beijing. We also have a pavilion in Tianjin, and then also other regional office. We're also based in the U.S. And I'll tell you how you can actually get involved and actually start to tap into the resources available. This is the primary opportunity available for you as a company. Now, not everybody may be involved specifically in the groundwater sector, but just to give you a foretaste of something that is having a lot of spotlight shined on it, is this groundwater and soil remediation trade mission to China. As Maureen said, it's going to have a policy track, but it's specifically going to be a trade mission that's going to be helping U.S. companies to meet the right people. It's going to have a networking. It's going to have a lot of matchmaking. So July 22nd to 30th, 2013, it's coming up in 3 months. It's going to be 3 or 4 months, and it's going to be to Beijing, Zhengzhou, and Tianjin. And we have already got full support from the Ministry of Environmental Protection there, and from the head environmental protection industry associations there. And you are going to be meeting lots of the right people in order to make those connections. If it's your first time, you're going to be basically guided all the way through with as much assistance as possible for you to be able to start to develop your business in China. We already talked about the groundwater market. Simply, it's there and it's available. So if you have more questions about that, please ask Lyda or myself. But in terms of how we're going to tap into it, the mission is certified by the U.S. Commercial Service. It includes participation from senior U.S. government officials at a very high level. You can ask Maureen or I for those specific government officials, but they're just the ones at the top of the chain, and they're going to be leading the delegation and provide delegate companies with an excellent opportunity to position themselves primarily through these opportunities. One is a presence at the China International Environmental Protection Exhibition, which Maureen talked about. Is a separate exhibition. Although it's not absolutely required, we highly recommend it because you get to exhibit there for 3 days. If you want to just visit and attend EIF, that is also an option. However, CPEC works very well. It's going to be recruited through another organization called BRCEA. If you want more information about that, let me know. But particularly, the mission is going to focus on seminar presentations, and networking and matchmaking opportunities, and really government meetings with industry regulators to be able to understand the market, and then for you to be able to be in touch with the people who can connect you to the right local partners. And the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service and us, the U.S. China Clean Tech Center, are on hand to do that networking and matchmaking for you. Here's the mission itinerary. July 22nd, you're going to arrive in Beijing. 23rd to 26th is the CPEC conference. At the same time, it's going to be the U.S.-China EIF that Maureen talked about. It's going to have a groundwater focus, but it will have, as also Maureen said, it's going to have other opportunities for you to have just a bilateral policy where MPT kind of provides an overview of environmental objectives, and you can have just a more general overview on U.S.-China environmental cooperation. But if you're in the groundwater, you can have a special track just for groundwater. If you have any involvement with shale gas, there's also another USTDA-sponsored event that's going to be just on shale gas. Please contact USTDA for more information, and we can give you more information on that. But this is when it starts to get really interesting. Is there's going to be matchmaking at Beijing, but then we're going to go to target cities. And one is Zhengzhou. Henan is one of the 4 pilot provinces designated to lead the development of groundwater and soil remediation. They have asked the U.S. government to help organize government meetings, industry presentations, and site visits. So we're going to bring the delegates all there. They're going to provide information about what their province needs. You're going to meet with local companies, and then you can have site visits to see where you might be able to get involved. So that's in Zhengzhou for 2 days. Then you're going to be in Tianjin. We have an exclusive agreement with Tianjin. I'll tell you more about Tianjin in the next slide, but it's going to focus on actually groundwater, but also soil remediation. Soil remediation is a really big need because of the industry in Tianjin. So it's been recommended to us by the highest level of the EPB, the Environmental Protection Bureau in Tianjin. They said, please bring U.S. soil remediation companies. We need soil remediation as a top need. So why Tianjin? Well, it's only 30 minutes away from Beijing, but it is the 4th largest city in China, and it actually has the highest per capita GDP in 2011. It's actually larger than Beijing and Shanghai. So this building on the right here, when you go to Tianjin, it will be available, and it's going to be a place where U.S. has a specific pavilion established within the Tianjin Economic Development Zone, where U.S. firms can promote their clean tech products and services, called the TIDA Eco Center. And we have exclusive representation through an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, to be displaying and exhibiting U.S. technology there. The Tianjin Economic Development Area is already a place where a lot of U.S. and foreign companies are coming, but then they have a specific place for clean technologies. They have a definite emphasis because it's the first low carbon kind of promotion center in China with a focus on international cooperation. So here's the trade mission value. I would love to tell you more information about this on a separate phone call, but I just want to let you know there's going to be government meetings. It's going to be business presentations, specifically networking and matchmaking, networking dinners, and as you know, in China, as everybody has said from beginning to end, even Margaret, who has been a CEO for so many decades and doing well in China, it is about connections. It's about finding the right partners, networking. So you want hands-on business assistants who will, take you to the right people, and counseling, and you want attendee lists and other types of value from that. So how to join the mission? I invite you to please visit our website. We are the ones who are doing the registration. Please visit our website, complete an application form, and email us. Space is limited. If all the attendees that are on this call was to attend, we would not be able to fit. And there's also sponsorship opportunities available for anybody who wants to have more recognition within the whole trade mission at EIF. Please contact me or Maureen if you'd like to have more information about that. So for more information, here's some of our details. We will send out these PowerPoints separately. Very quickly, just to end, if you are not specifically in groundwater or soil remediation, I want to let you know about all other water technology. It is still something we are still doing matchmaking for. And any of these clean tech sectors, as long as it is clean to China, then it's considered clean tech. Some people say, like, what is actually clean tech? Well, if it's cleaner now in China, it could be actually a really old environmental technology to the U.S. Groundwater has been protected for decades in the U.S., but only now being protected in China. So if it's just even slightly more efficient than what you have seen before, then it's really good to China already. So I want to offer that to you. Please let us know if you have any questions about any UCCT services. We do provide matchmaking for all types of clean tech. So it matters for any type of water technology company. We'll give you an immediate lasting presence in China, marketing, and also matchmaking and hands-on business services. The best way to find out is through our website. We will give you targeted promotion through our websites to the China market, and you'll be able to find out more information through there. So I'm going to wrap up with, but I just really want want to make sure that you know the difference, that this is not just simply a trade mission where you go to exhibit, but really facilitated deal making where you find out it's the local Chinese partners, and that's why you need to be on the ground in China. You can't just do it sitting in office in the U.S. So if you have any questions, I invite you to contact us. I'm going to skip the rest of the slides, but please feel free to contact us if you have any other questions. We look forward to helping you tap into the China market. It is there for the taking, and we know that you will be wildly successful as long as you have the right strategy and as long as you actually do work with the right people and take advantage of the resources available. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Yuman. That was also a great presentation. Certainly the U.S.-China Clean Tech Center has allowed ISET and ITA to really enhance the programs and support available for U.S. companies, especially having that office there on the ground in China is a unique partnership for us, and I really hope that you will all take advantage of this. I know that we've bombarded you with a lot of information about the different agencies and thrown a lot of acronyms at you, but you know, the bottom line is that we really want to illustrate to you the opportunities available, and especially make sure you walk away with an understanding that there are a lot of resources available and people that are standing ready to help you. So I hope you will do so, and especially will consider the trade mission, which is an excellent opportunity to really get your foot on the ground in China. And I would now like to turn over to invite our operator back and turn it over to her so that she can facilitate any questions. You can hit *0 for the operator to unmute your phone. You can also send a question to me or to any of the speakers via the net portion by selecting the Q&A from the top of your screen and typing your question in the box. And in fact, I already have a question that I'll go ahead and answer now. The question was, will the presentations be made available, and is this being recorded? And the answer is yes. We will send the recorded version to the participants. And if you would also like copies of the presentations, we will do that on a case-by-case basis because they're rather large, so we won't send them to everybody, but please do feel free to respond to the email we send out. We'll be happy to send you the presentations.
I will now open it in.
Yep, go ahead.
This is the operator. Apologies for interrupting. It is actually press *1 and record your name if you want to get an audio cue rather than *0. *1. It will take a moment for names to come up if they do want to queue up.
I'll go ahead and read a question that I've got in the box here while we're waiting. The question is, what other service providers, for example, IP lawyers, do you recommend companies engage to follow through properly in China? Any one of our speakers can answer.
Yeah, I can take that one. Well, that's the reason why the U.S. Department of Commerce really is here, and there's a lot of U.S. export assistance centers around the United States that can help you. If you want to have specific China advice, the best way would be talk to us, the U.S.-China Clean Tech Center, who can get you connected with clean tech IP lawyers with specific actual experience in China, and also the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service was a very in-depth, comprehensive IP portfolio strategy, how to kind of overcome the challenges. Once again, it's not a matter of if you can do it, it's a matter of how you can overcome these challenges, such as IP challenges. So service providers, there's a lot of different types of service providers, but the main things are things such as financing, the Export-Import Bank, and IP, as you recommended. And number 3, just logistics, sourcing, and then just general how to, business structures and things like that. And that's all things that we can help you the U.S.-China Cleantech Center, we actually recommend you to contact us directly. We will get you in touch with the right government resources and also the right private resources. We're partnered with several expert providers who, at the beginning, if you're SME, can probably provide you free initial consultation for a lot of these things, and then you can decide on which service provider you need best. You can kind of probably be picky about it and choose what's best for you, instead of just having one large consulting company that does try to do everything for you and charge you lots and lots of money. So that's what we'll do. We'll give you one-on-one assistance and what works best for you.
And this is Margaret. I have an advice also on the IP. Our company has Chinese lawyers, U.S. lawyers, Hong Kong lawyers. We do use them. But when we have an issue on an IP, we have successfully lobby or talk to the government officials within the city or within the province that we are working with, and it becomes very effective because we're a U.S. company. When we file a complaint, we just talk to the government, the politicians. And it's very effective because as we indicated the problem, we told them who we are, what has been done, talking to the mayor of the city, talking to the governor, and trust me, that is very effective. Because once we found out who is creating the problem and what kind of issues, and report to them, and they will impose on them faster than the lawyer does.
Fantastic. That's a great piece of advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Operator, do we have any questions on the line?
No, Ms. Denend. There is no one in the queue.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here in our Q&A box. This question is for Lyda. How can U.S. companies get involved in TDA's trade missions or feasibility studies?
Great question. Feasibility studies and pilot projects, I would encourage anybody who has an idea, and that would include a potential partner or an agreed partner in China, for a feasibility study or a pilot project, to just give me a call, or for that matter, my fellow country manager, Brenda Fike, is accessible at the same number. And talk it through. We don't want anyone to do a lot of work writing an application or a proposal if that time has any chance of being wasted. So we like to just talk with people about their ideas and give people direction. In terms of events or trade missions, as soon as we have dates and plans, we put these up on our website. You're also, anyone who's interested is invited to follow us on Twitter or Facebook, or sign up for the TDA newsletter, which highlights upcoming activities. And then we take requests from there. Anytime we put out stuff both as we fund it, so you know it's coming up, and then as soon as the dates are put together. So we generally go out actively in partnership with the commercial service. We could not do our work without their extremely helpful resources. They also usually reach out. But we accept registration, through each of those portals individually for reverse trade missions and for workshops. For larger things, we always start with just a one-on-one discussion.
Great. Thanks very much. Operator, do we have any questions from the phone end of things?
There are no questions on the audio side. Again, it's *1 if you would like to queue up.
Yeah, Jetta, there is one question about the cost of the trade mission. I'd like to answer that if that's possible.
Yep.
So there is a question regarding the actual cost. And because it is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Commerce and us as a nonprofit, it is very cost-effective. It includes one delegate per company and covers all the official activities, as well as receptions, mission-sponsored meals. It does not include just travel. You have to book your own ticket. You can use business if you want to fly business and things like that. And lodging, we will give you recommendations, but also you have to find your own lodging. And also if you need a personal interpreter one-on-one, although there's interpretation for the large seminars, EIF, all these large, where we have receptions and where we have anything that's group. But if you need to do one-on-one, it doesn't include personal interpreter. But for SMEs, it is under $4,000, $4,000 or below. And for large companies, it's $5,000 or below. So that's, if you look at trade admissions, I mean, for 1 week, that is, obviously you can see, just very, very cost effective. So we're just doing it just to make sure that people can tap into the market. You can bring additional delegates if you want, to a maximum of 2 delegates. But all of the one-on-one matchmaking, that's all included in the admission cost, and a lot of the networking reception, which includes some meals and things like that, includes hands-on business technical assistance and the government meetings. If you want an exhibit booth, like a special exhibit where you can demonstrate your technology and kind of have a booth at CTEC, that's $3,600. You can share a booth for half the price for $1,800. But again, if you're just interested in most of the matchmaking, things like that, it's under $4,000 for small, medium enterprise, and $5,000 for large. If you want to know more information about that, I can send you more information, and I'll be glad to talk with you over the phone regarding any of the details, such as logistics.
Okay, great. I have one more question here. Operator, is there anything on your end?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So this is a question for Margaret and Lyda. What preparations can we take to be able to act quickly on the ground? I believe this is in response to Lyda. I think you mentioned the importance of being able to act quickly, working with the local government. I think the question is what preparations can be taken to be agile on the ground and ready to do business in country.
Sure. I'm happy to answer. I imagine Margaret may have some additional points. But basically, the market moves very quickly in China. There's adequate financing. People are trying to meet goals, as I mentioned, on these 5- and 10-year plans very rapidly. And so then things come up that the lead time is shorter and the decision-making process is quick. Really, what you need is the same thing you need to operate in China, which is local presence, so that you get that information quickly, local partner that can be your local presence that you can rely on, depend, and who knows the lay of the land, so who understands who the decision makers are, which province and which provincial officials are going to be the buyers and who are formulating these plans, so that they can be, and you can be ready to act when those bidding opportunities come out. Margaret, do you have something to add to that?
Yes, I agree with Lyda that finding a local partner is essential. Somebody who already know the roadmap and how they can connect you with the buyers. But one key thing that I found that a lot of the U.S. company are not lacking is doing the due diligence of trying to understand the Chinese market, trying to understand who and what is happening in terms of the competition, in terms of the buyer's mode, and also the pricing. Again, going back to what I say, there's selling what the market wants, but not selling what you have on hand is applicable to the U.S. market. We see a lot of companies who are successful that they will modify their product, they will adjust their plan to fit into the Chinese way of buying. So I highly encourage that people who want to go a fast track is to be able to do their own due diligence to find out, who are your competitors and what's happening in China. That's very important. Of course, finding a partner is also as important too.
Wonderful. Thank you. I don't have any other questions on my end, and we're nearing the end of our session here. Operator, do we have any last questions?
There are none. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today, especially to our speakers for sharing their expertise with us. And I would like to encourage all of you to please reach out to the different offices that you heard from today, or any one of us, we'd be happy to connect you to any of the speakers and organizations. And we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This does conclude today's conference call. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect your lines at this time.